Good evening. Today we're starting a new game. This one's called Teardown. Congratulations, Jake Straw, on being first. So yeah, this game I got a little ways back, and the gameplay wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, so I ended up not going through it. Thank you for the hydration. But now I know what the game is more like, so I'm more prepared for it, and I will not be not in the mood for it. Also, thank you for the headpats. Also, there's workshop support, and there's this box that I found. So I'm gonna be her, because why not? Also, this game sometimes runs poorly. So if my system just straight up cannot handle it, thank you for the rotation. I will try to find something else to play, but so far it's feeling decent. You can switch between first and third person view. I am a fox, this is excellent. I think she's from a gacha game. I don't play it though. I click, I can drag things that are not nailed down. Home sweet home. Oh boy, tools. Fire extinguisher, spray can, mallet. Or sledge, I suppose. Now we gotta replace the fuse. What kind of game is this? This is a game about foxes and... Sorry. This is a game about destruction and crime. There's a fuse in here somewhere. Here we are. Yes, all will be revealed shortly. Fire extinguisher instead of flamethrower. just you wait. The list of tools will be expanded. Somebody by the name of Tracy has sent me a bill for the gas. Gas bill just dropped on the floor. Honestly, I'm not sure we can make it through the month. Are you getting any requests? At this point, we pretty much have to accept anything. Be creative. Hugs, Mom. Forward, old building problem. This just came in. Sounds kind of fishy, but we need the money. You up for it? From Gordon Wu, old building problem. Good evening. My name is Gordon Wu, general manager at the Advertised Mall. I have a slight problem with an old building that's blocking our plans for a new wing, and I need someone to knock it over. I need to come by tomorrow, and I'd be willing to pay more than the standard rate for some extra discretion, quick execution, and uncomfortable working hours. Would you be able to take care of it? So yeah, this nice property developer is going to pay us to take care of, this old house that, surely nobody wants anymore. In order to expand real estate. This is totally on the up and up. Also, we have to do it at midnight without anybody noticing. There is a there's a chimney here that's made of brick. But there seem to be some propane canisters here, so maybe we can make some things happen. I'll come up with something. Let's see here. We have this vehicle. We have this shed here. I don't think this one needed my help. And we have some construction equipment over here. Excellent. I like how you can see the character's halo. Let's see. We're good. Okay, so A and D to steer. I don't think I can spin in place. So I might have to Austin Powers this a little bit. I think Austin Powers is the movie where the guy went back and forth a lot. I've never actually seen it. Also, come to think of it, I never actually checked if anybody was, like, in there. So I'm just gonna presume that they weren't. This is fine. Yeah, if they didn't wanna get, like, bulldozered or... I actually don't know what this piece of... I actually don't know what this piece of construction equipment is called, come to think of it. But if they didn't want to get, like, constructed, they shouldn't have been in the way of construction. Now, I do believe that that chimney is, like, the last big thing. So, I think I need to find a way to, like, set off that propane. Or maybe I just have to, like, crash into it with something a little bit bigger. I'll figure it out. Oh, it looks like I was actually taking chunks out of this thing. So maybe I just had to be a little bit more, active about it. Now, of note is that if I knock it down but it's still, like, too high, I'll have to, like, break it down more. You know, the brick chimney is literally holding the entire thing up at this point. Oh, there we go. Now we just gotta take the topmost part and make it... Still technically the topmost part, come to think of it, but, like, lower. Just pull this down. This is probably the correct way to use this piece of equipment. There we go. Demolition complete. I am the best contractor. With a K. Job well done. I've always wanted to do that in real life. Also, I like that this means that the main character sleeps with a sledgehammer. Investigation. What a morning. Shouldn't have taken that job. I knew something wasn't right. That building was under cultural heritage protection, and the demolition is now part of a criminal investigation. Miss Turtleman at the police just sent me this photo. They must have caught you on a traffic camera heading towards the mall. The very last thing we need right now is an investigation. I tried sweet-talking her, and she thought she could get the case dropped, but asked for a favor in return. I don't know what she wants, but just do it. She'll email you directly. Just so you know, I don't usually do this, but I'm stuck on a case and I feel like I should try something new. I've been investigating Lawrence Lee Jr. over tax evasion for months now, but he has so many friends in town that I just can't get a warrant. How about you use your skills to borrow the computers over at Lee Chemical so I can finally access his customer registry and sort this mess out? If you do this for me, I'll make sure your little blunder will be forgotten. Alright. Operated by the Lee family for 3 generations, Lawrence Lee Jr. showed a promising start, but developed a weakness for fast cash. He is now a well-known name in the criminal underworld. So yeah, my objective this time is not to cause destruction per se, but to steal computers. Destruction is just, you know, one way to do so. So, up here we can see that, or in the upper right, I don't think you can see my cursor. If I set a big fire, it'll set off the smoke alarm and trigger people to come investigate. So I gotta be careful not to do that. Door is locked. That's fine though. I happen to have a key. It's always good to, you know, treat yourself when you're working hard. Right. Not the computer I'm after. Right. I am not stealing. I am merely taking possession of things. Last thing I want is up there. Think. There appears to be a ladder here. Or a door that's up here. However... I feel like this is an easier solution. Oh, hello. Yoink. Is for me. I did not need to do that, but now they'll think that, like, the thief drove off in this and not this. Surely. Never mind that it's still at the scene. Hit and run, no fun for Lee's son. There's been a break-in at Lee Chemicals. The perpetrator caused property damage and managed to get away with electronic equipment. CEO Lawrence Lee Jr. says they will upgrade security and should be up and running again soon. I'll get him eventually. German has the word Eigentümer, which means rightful owner, and the word Beisitzer, which means owner. The lesson who owns it, Mars, and who holds it right now. Nice. Also, forgive me if I got this wrong. Login devices. The customer registry indicates that Lee has worked almost exclusively with a single client recently. The client is only referred to as BT, and no further details, so I really have to bother you with one more favor. Gordon Wu is not BT. Head back to Lee Chemicals and fetch their employee login devices. I should be able to cross-reference their log files with the delivery schedule to figure out where they're moving the product and what BT means. I heard they installed a new security system. Be careful. So the three login devices are protected by an alarm system. Security will arrive 60 seconds after the alarm is triggered. So, also I like how the gate is like locked now. I don't believe I can get into my car to, like, just drive through it. Yeah, let me in. This is fine. I will simply... find an alternative route. Alright, I'm in. Now the alarm will be triggered if any of the devices are taken, so in order to speed up my exit, I should facilitate said exit right now. Alright, so the things I want are here, here, and here. I have 60 seconds to grab all three and get out. And stuff like this is where the spray can is useful. Because it can be like, go this way. Little notes for myself. Okay, so one of the things that I'm after is going to be over here. Does the yellow paint thing really count if I'm literally the one who put it down? Yeah, so think here, if I grab that, the alarm will start, so I'm not going to grab it just yet. Oh, I fell. I believe you can also do quick saves. So like if you set up your, if you set up the heist, you can quick save before actually like trying to execute it, so you don't have to do the setup every single time. Which I think is lovely. Okay, so I see that there's a thing over here, and then like this thing, which I presume is like some kind of chute. So the beginnings of a plan are beginning to take form in my mind. I'm thinking I'll start up here and then run over here, or I'll start over here and then run over here. This looks like it'd be a pain to get up onto, so starting over here seems to make more sense to me. So I probably want a route that looks roughly like this. So I will begin by trying to figure out how to get in. Well, that was easier done than said. So things right here. How do I get out? Going around the side isn't an option. If I could punch a hole in the wall right there. What if I can like Tarzan swing with this? Hold on. That'll be a no. If I could, though, imagine how awesome that'd be. Okay, so if I could like blast a hole in the wall, I could maybe use that. I'd have to make that jump, but like that's an easy jump. There's this as well, which seems to be a little bit easier to access, if a bit more precarious, and there's a window here. Alright, so I'm gonna grab this, then go out this window. I think I have to jump on this first. Okay, that's so doable. That is so doable. Then I just jump like this. Then I can grab this one. And then the last one is to the north. And it's in here. I can't sledgehammer my way through bricks. It's almost like this game is like balanced or something. I'm not seeing a way in. But like, that's not because the option isn't available. Rather, it's because I have aphantasia, and even though I can imagine something, doesn't mean I can actually see it. Now I see an entrance. And the thing is right there, in fact. Do I need all these arrows? Absolutely not. Do they amuse me? Yes. Yes, they do. Yeah, it would appear that I've got a plan. I kind of wish that, like, doing this would, like, make the paint can rattling noise. Right? And quick save. Oh shoot, where are my arrows? Ah, there they are. I legit lost, I legit forgot where I was for a second. Drink. And then we make our escape. Could have been a faster setup. Also, I like how it's got like this this like little like replay thing for like the route that you took. So y'all are talking about how sledgehammers break bricks, but you are neglecting to consider that I'm the one swinging it. It's not can a sledgehammer break a brick, it's can Ariel break a brick with a sledgehammer. Those are two very different questions, I think. Amateur, you reached a new rank, a new tool has been delivered. New tool, you say? So you were talking about fire? Yes, it's nice when things burn. I can also upgrade my tools over here now. Sledgehammer can't be upgraded. Spray can can't be upgraded. Extinguisher can't be upgraded. Blowtorch. With enough money, I could give it more fuel. Wood is extremely resistant to fire compared to metal. Depends on how dried out the wood is, I think. But, like, normally, yes, because it's got, like, a high water content, I believe. I think. Message. Tracy, need coffee. They turned off the gas. I can't even make a proper coffee anymore. We really need to bring in more clients. I'll reach out to Gordon and see if he has something else. I haven't heard back from the police. That thing's sorted. Marina too small. Thanks for helping me out with that building. The police were snooping around a little, but it seems to have cooled off now and we can finally start construction. I actually have another job for you. See, I bought this yacht recently, but it's too large for the marina, and the board says there's no space for a new dock. Could you use your demolition skills again and remove one of the timeshare cabins? If the original documentation also disappeared, then ta-da, like it was never there. Make room for the new yacht by demolishing the outermost cabin, destroy proof of ownership by dumping the safes in the ocean. Timeshare cabin, you pay money and you live in it for like a month or two. It's like renting, but for like... It's renting. It's just renting. Large fires will trigger the alarm. So this is my escape vehicle. I need to dump this thing into the water, get the safe into the water, and there's a backup safe over here that I should also get if I want to be thorough, which I do. Swordfish. Bro suck vacuum cleaner. That basically just doubled my monetary worth. That amuses me. Alright, safe. There's gonna be a safe over here somewhere. So, I gotta get this into the water. Luckily there's no, like, security alarm on it or anything. Presumably because they knew that, like, trying to stop me would be futile. Come on, come on. Alright, one of two. Now the other stuff is all over here. Imagine mowing the lawn with a sledgehammer. There are actually no objectives in here. But there was a bingo trophy, so it was worth my time to come in here. Cash box worth 80 bucks. I can already tell that my sense of direction is going to be on full display playing this game. But indeed, many things for Fox. Look at it this way. This is a place where, like, really rich people, like, park their things, so, like... they really aren't even gonna notice this, honestly. Thank you for the head pats. I appreciate them. Anyway, I just so happen to have a specialty piece of equipment to help me demolish this thing. You're good. You're good. Whenever I, like, see something scraping against something else, I just think of that one scene from SpongeBob. Release me. Honestly, I could probably finish this off with the sledgehammer. As somebody who almost got a job on a ship welcoming passengers and selling tickets, this is what you would have done. Professional demolition work. Demolition complete. Oh, I missed a warehouse safe. Oh, that's all the way over here. I misinterpreted what I had to do. That's fine though, because I don't have to leave just yet. This feels much better to drive. Mostly because it's faster. I like it when things go fast. Is that a floating, inner tube? Okay. Textbook. And let's see if there's anything for Fox. Lots of these things look valuable, but they aren't, like, grabbable. And we find ourselves with another safe. And the closest water looks to be about here. There's just this fence in the way. Luckily, I just happened to pick up a tool that's good for getting rid of metal. I don't have unlimited fuel, but if I'm careful, I don't need unlimited fuel. The only boat you have right now is an inflatable one with paddles. I mean, that's more boat than I got. It's actually kind of funny. I live on the water, but like not in a way where I would ever want to actually go out onto the water. Think less beach, more shipping. It's not a pleasant place, honestly. At least I would call it, like, not a tourist spot. Despite what the local government would like you to believe. Alright, and I've done everything, so it's time to get out of here. This is a motorboat. Why is it slow? There should be a button to push to make it go faster. I have to do with my ears, but like those don't count. And we're gone. Novice, you have reached a new rank, a new tool has been delivered. And we've gotten ourselves a shotgun. Typical demolition stuff. So I can upgrade the number of rounds, the damage that it does, or how far it goes. I feel like number of rounds is, like, probably worth it. Classic cars. Fantastic work at the marina. Looks like it worked because they just cleared a construction permit for the new dock. Another thing came up. There was this classic car auction up in Black River the other day, and one guy just kept overbidding me. Lawrence Lee Jr., that youngster who inherited the chemical plant a few years ago. Absolutely no interest in cars, he's just looking for ways to rotate his dirty money. It's a Ghost Seidel B-50, the one they used to seal the deal to in Colonel Wilson's personal Jacoby from Normandy. Lee's about to put those cars on a ship overseas any day now, and they'll be out of the country for good. If that's not criminal, I don't know what is. If you can help me acquire those 2 gems, I'll take good care of them. Yeah, sure. Get the 2 classic cars, drive them to the marked area. If possible, pick up spare parts and vehicle registration documents. Saw a video of a guy powering an axe with shotgun shells to split wood. I've seen that one too. It's really cool. I've also seen one of a guy making nunchucks out of a couple of World War I era, like front-loading rifles. He like rigged them to go off like when they struck something. So he just like made like gunchucks, and he was like doing these things with them, and they like flicked it at a watermelon, and it like hit it and it exploded. And he was like, "For the love of God, don't ever do this at home." Okay, so, fire alarm, wired alarm boxes. If I break an alarm box or a wire, it triggers the alarm. There appears to be a best path button. I wonder if it's like keeping track of that for like speedrunning. Yeah, the gunchucks video. I got a friend who's like actually like into guns. I know a thing or two about guns, but I'm not like into guns. I got a friend who's like into guns. And I showed him the gunchucks video, and he was like, "Ariel, please, don't make me watch this. This is actually causing me physical pain." Your grandfather had a halberd on the wall? That's awesome. I can understand why you weren't allowed to touch it, but like... it does feel like a missed opportunity. You know, given that I've broken into like multiple places, you'd think that they would hire at least one like actual human security person. Or Fox security person. You know, we'd be just as good at the job. So if I grab this, it'll trigger the alarm. If I try to destroy this, it'll also trigger the alarm. So it is time to... perhaps contemplate using the spray paint again. Okay, let's see. I probably want driving the vehicles out to be like the last thing that I do. If I can get a vehicle like up here without setting off an alarm, I could like take this, get into the vehicle, and then drive off with it. I will come back here when I know more about the overall objective. Okay, so thing here, thing here, thing here. I kind of want ice cream now. I've got a sore on my tongue. And I've been, like, biting it involuntarily, like, all day. And some ice cream I think would be nice. Alright, let's, do a little bit of this. So there appears to be a thing over there. I do see lights flipping. But if memory serves, that's not always, the worst thing in the world. Okay, in this instance, if I were to drive this off, it would break the wire. But if I can move this crate somehow... Or if I could just move the vehicle that it's on, the boat that it's on. And I can perhaps, more easily drive off with this thing later. There we go, textbook. They even gave us like this nice sheet for like unloading. How kind of them. Alright, so I can just dry that off and put it in the thing there. And there's stuff... That also puts me like roughly in this area. So that's also nice. And simply being economical, saving on blowtorch fuel. Okay, so there are documents in the office, spare parts in the warehouse. That's spare parts in the warehouse. And there's documents in the office. This is wired up to a thing. This might not be... I mean, I can just look. I don't have to speculate. So this one is wired up, but it's in a vehicle that itself is not. So I can just try this vehicle off and be fine. And who puts a wireless thing on, like, a toolbox? I could just take the bits out of the toolbox. Oh well. This is fine. This is fine. Let's see. Oh, interesting. It just opens the thing if you get near it. Guess that's not an option. I will try to get this not in the middle of the road so that when I'm driving the other car it's easier to get it through. Good enough. Is there even like a driver's seat anywhere? Also, I see now that I can just lower this. Makes my life a bit easier. Okay, so both cars are accounted for. There's a thing over there. What I need to do is probably grab this, zip across, grab this, so I can use a speedboat for that. And then just kind of like grab both cars in a reasonable time frame, I think. I hope. This is what quick save is for. There's always the possibility that I could have had one a little bit closer to the escape thing, but there's no point in speculating. I mean, there kind of is. That's how you iterate and improve. We're gonna quick save, and once I grab this, I have 60 seconds to do everything. Yeah, I quick saved. I don't gotta overthink this. Okay, timer does not pause when you're in the map. I have 30 seconds. I don't feel like that's gonna be enough time. But all I can do is try, so... Oh, this thing's zippy. I like this. Hold on. This might be doable. Not even close. Is this corn? Well, it's... whatever corn turns into when you hit it with a hammer now. I forgot that I had the shotgun, if I'm being entirely honest. Lawrence Lee Jr. Not really demolition, but... You don't know me, but I've had a series of break-ins recently. In the last one, I lost 2 very rare classic cars, and guess what? I know who did it too. Gordon Wu, that absolute prick, is now bragging to everybody at the club about his 2 new faith possessions. The break-ins caused me a bit of property damage, and I'd like to let Gordon taste some of his own medicine. Since you're in the demolition industry, I thought, well, I don't know if you do this sort of work, but let me know if it sounds interesting. Yeah, sure. The home of mall manager and racing enthusiast Gordon Wu, his daughter Freya, and fiancé... I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. Kumans. An exclusive match with a private racetrack in the backyard. Dumped at least 3 of his cars in the water. I really enjoy that, like, both of these terrible men are hiring me. Like, back and forth, not knowing that I'm the one playing both sides. Okay, fire alarm. Alarm boxes. Either one triggers the alarm. There are 6 targets. I only need 3 of them in the water. I don't think I get bonus. Okay, I do get bonus. The more I get, the better. So, also of note, especially for like optional objectives, I don't always have to get them immediately. I can, whoops, I can always just come back later and do it when I have like more tools. And this might be one of those missions that would be better served by more advanced tools. I'm not sure. I'll try to work it out. Nice fancy vehicle. Can't move it without setting off an alarm. It's not really nearby to any water. I guess if I were to do anything with this one, I'd want it to be like... just straight out this way. I wonder if I can ramp it off these bushes. I probably can't, it probably just plows straight through them. But I want to try it, see if I can. Oh, the thing just opens. Right, if I can move things, or if I can punch a hole in the wall, I can do that. And luckily I happen to have a hole punch here. Or a wall punch here. Oh. It also just opens the thing. That's funny. I keep forgetting that that's technically an option. Get that nice cleared out. Oh. I can use these. Pretty sure I can set these off with the blowtorch. Also, if I like mangle my words more than normal, it's because of like the sore on my tongue that I mentioned earlier. I apologize. I'm trying to talk around it. Ooh, dolphins. Be free. Oh, goodness. I was not prepared for the dolphin to crumble. I was not prepared for the dolphin to crumble like that, if I'm being entirely honest. Oh, goodness. Yeah, we got another thing here. Looks like... I can put things in the trunk. Good to know. Looks like I probably want to take this one and just drive it straight. Silly me assuming that a bush would catch fire. Okay, let's get this thing out of the way. And this should be a straight shot into the water. I'll just, get this tree out of the way as well. If you ever ask me to do yard work, it's gonna look something like this. Not out of obstinance, but rather just because I don't know any better. Really, I'm not suited for yard work. Yeah, that's probably fine. Okay, so I got this one I can just drive out. This one I can just drive out. This one... How long is the alarm anyway? I should check that. 60 seconds doesn't sound like a lot of time to, like, run back. What if it's possible to demolish the part of the car that's connected to the alarm, and then drive off? Doesn't appear to be an option. But it was worth considering. Less maybe. Okay, yeah, that doesn't work. I was like, maybe that was like the fire alarm and not the alarm. Yeah, same deal there. There certainly are instances where you can just, like... not have to worry about a given alarm box. I wonder if in order to make time I actually have to, like, set up another vehicle to drive back. That sort of thing definitely is possible, just not always in the most convenient way. Yoink and yoink. Those are mine. If not for me, then why for me shaped? This one's super close to water. Literally just like drive it forward and to the right. This one is in a cart, so that one's going to be the easiest to move. And this is just the last one, I think. And if memory serves, that one isn't in drivable condition. I did play a few levels of this before. If memory serves, that one's not drivable, so I need to find another way to move it. But almost all of them are accounted for at this point, at least. Ow. Yeah, it does not have tires. I don't think I can put tires on myself. So the good news is, it doesn't appear to be wired up, so... Oh, hang on, maybe I can put the tires on myself. There are two here, can I... Not an option? No? Anyway, if I can't get this one into the water, I can do it before setting off the timer, so that's cool. So I'll probably do that first. I'll probably just, like, push it from behind with another vehicle. Like, say, this one. Textbook. I just had a thought. If I can carve this thing down into a more handleable chunk, perhaps. Oh, is there like a center line that I can't carve through? Okay, I can make it light enough to move. This is an option. Textbook. Alright, we're gonna take a 5-minute break here. Please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom, anything that would take you about 5 minutes. I will see you shortly. I return. And I will begin my brilliant heist, in the same way that most brilliant heists begin, with dragging the carcass of a car, the carcass, if you will, by hand into the ocean. Up a hill. It is actually going to be uphill, my goodness. Also, thank you for the head pats. You know what? Maybe I was onto something earlier with this. Not quite how I thought that was going to play out, but you know what? We take this. You know what? It's lighter now. This counts. Oh, this isn't even slow. Alright. With all that weight that it lost. This totally still counts as a car, right? I sure think it does. That's what I'll be telling the client. I'm here. Come on, over here. Ah, yes, grass, notoriously one of the more high friction of surfaces. I'm actually like leaning into it in real life, that is not how this works. Right, one down. Alright, let's take stock. So this one I can just drive out. I do kind of think there should be like another vehicle to get me like back quickly. Otherwise I'll waste a lot of time just running. So I drive one out, I drive back. I wonder if this one I can put into the water without it triggering an alarm, as long as it stays on the bed of the other thing. Easy way to find out, I suppose. Ooh, hippos. Not gonna lie, I wouldn't have decorated with topiary hippos. I would have gone with foxes, personally. So if I drive this whole thing into the water, what happens? Because like I'm not disconnecting it from the box per se. Not gonna lie, didn't expect to get away with that one. But alright. Okay, so this one just drives out. So this one drives up, I drive back down. I drive one off to the right. I should probably have another car to drive back. I drive that one out, then I should probably have another car to drive up and then get away. It is a little weird to put it on the carrier, but like, not complaining. Okay, so I need to get a car around the side here. And luckily there happens to be a road for this purpose. Awesome. I would feel so nervous trying to... Now who's the dummy who put a tree right here? I would feel so nervous trying to drive a car in a situation like that in real life. Alright, so... I put that there. Okay, so... I go up, I come back down, I go out, I come back, I go out. I just gotta grab that thing while I'm in the area, I suppose. And then there should be one more car to kind of take me from there out. I see some cars there. They'll probably work. This is pretty. I like this. Where does this go? Imagine having an elevator that you have to open by hand. That sounds tremendously unsafe. Ooh, popcorn. Dark Moon, a Tuxedo Labs moving pictures production, based on a fictional story. It would actually be incredible if there was like a whole feature-length, like, pixel film that you could just sit and watch. What was I doing? Oh, right, cars. I saw shiny colors and I was like, ooh. That can go there. Right, assuming that my plan works as planned, I should be in position to start the heist. There's just one last thing that I'm missing. One last piece to the puzzle. I gotta cover my tracks. See, so the vision here, is clearly nobody would actually sign their name. They're just trying to they're just trying to throw me under the bus. You know, why would I ever do this? Like, I'm the last person who would do this. Very non-masterful, you say. I mean, let's just see if I, fall under suspicion after this mission concludes. Alright. I have 60 seconds to do everything. Let's see if it pays off. Mistakes have been made. This is fine. I'll do it better. I just have to trust that that one will end up in the ocean. I don't think that one's ending. No, wait, there it goes, there it goes. I just had to believe. Who put this tree here? Where even is the last car? Oh wait, it was over there. For the 3 optional tasks, there are 6 cars. I can put any 3 of them into the water to fulfill the mandatory objective. Getting all of them, or getting more than the required 3 out of the available 6 is optional. Though what the optional objective actually is going to vary from mission to mission. Way out. Oh, this thing is fast. I was not expecting that to be that fast. The planning is fine, the execution requires some, iteration, perhaps. That said, there's absolutely no way that I'm getting this done without, other cars to, shuttle me around quickly. Go fast, go fast, go fast. I fear that I'm not going to have enough time to get away. I just had an idea. So, like, my getaway car is here. So if I make this the last thing that I drop into the water, I have a much shorter run, so... Maybe I take this one, I drive it off to the right, dunk that thing into the water. wonder how reasonable it would be to like have one car kind of like shove another, perhaps? Also just getting this glass out of the way in general. I could like sever this pillar and like... Let's see. See, if I can draw something out here, I can just get into my car and leave. So then I don't have to spend as much time escaping. Is there any way that I can just send this like off to the right a little bit and have it like roll into the water? Probably not. If I could draw on screen, I would. I haven't set that up. I probably should. It wouldn't even be that hard, come to think of it. Also, if this pool was filled with water, I would try to just dump the cars in there. That would save me a ton of time. Oh, bad thought. That does count. Okay. Hold up. Hold up. She cooking. There's also a pool of water here, but that's not really close to anything. So I'm thinking I dump this into the water. I dump this into the water, go over there, dump that into the water, dump that into the water, drive back, dump this into the water, get into my escape vehicle. There's also a pond here, so I could maybe even... What if I can fit 2 cars in there? Because I kind of want to take this one out there. The cool thing about a game like this is that there isn't necessarily one intended solution. I'm glad I noticed that this little pool was here. Yeah, if I can get more than one car in there, which I don't see why I couldn't, especially with that little one over there. I'm thinking... I drive this one to here, go down here, drive this one off to the right, get the little car, drive the little car back up, put that in the pool here, grab this car, drive up to the north, escape. In my head, this works. Not like that, it doesn't. Now, I could just hit the brakes, but it would also, I think, be funnier if I just, like, put up, like, a backstop. I don't think that's a very effective backstop. I should probably just, like, tap the brakes. There was exactly one thing on the route that I could crash into, and I crashed into it. Surely this is possible. If it isn't, I can just basically do the same thing. Dump that one to the water and then grab the other car that I set up. I had a ton of leeway, so I should probably just do that. Almost. I feel like if I just execute a tiny little bit better, I've so got this. I just need, like, more optimized lines. Who put that tree there? SMH. That tree is consistently, like, in the worst possible spot it could be. Almost. That car that I'm getting into over there can't handle the, can't handle the grass. It takes way too long to get up to speed. Also, if that tree wasn't in the way, that also would be, like, a thing that would stop it from being an issue. Also, I should probably go around, like, the right instead of the left. Given that there's no barricades on the right. I can remove the tree? True. That is also an option. The best option, one might say. I should also smash up this glass. This is also, like, losing me a bunch of time. Well, not a bunch of time, but, like, appreciable fractions of a second, which has actually made the difference a couple of times. It might just be in my head, but I feel like this is one of those games where going diagonally is faster than going in straight lines. That was not as effective as it was going to be in my mind. I was kind of expecting the tree to just kind of like not exist anymore after that. Listen up. Alternatively... Excellent. Right, surely with that... Surely there's enough, like, little time saves that it'll add up. I can so totally do this. I started out thinking, oh, surely I need more advanced tools. No, I just needed box ingenuity. And the ability to get into a car through the front hood. Very important, that. Oh, come on. I literally crashed into nothing. Thank you for the headpats. Close enough. Oh my goodness, I got flung by the tree. Everything I do to try and make the tree less of an obstacle makes it more of an obstacle. Like, the tree wasn't even an obstacle to begin with. I just chopped it down because I thought it would be funny. And now I'm suffering the consequences. With a K. I feel like I wasted a little bit too much time, but I'll play it out, see what happens. Oh, I definitely feel like I wasted too much time. But I'll play it out. Zero shot, I get this done now. This is so doable. Lost a bit of time with the dismount. Jumping over the pool is fairly easy to do. Lets me shave that corner. What if I just went in a straight... Okay, a straight line does not work. I was like, perhaps I will ramp up. Okay, good dismount. Good jump. I could probably spend like a minute or two thinking about a slightly more optimal route and not have to do this, but at this point it's personal. I am so grateful for the quick save, quick load. Release me! Release me. Okay, good driving, good driving. Okay, I've got so much time. Believe. Yes. Go, 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 go. On the pavement. Oh my god, I could've just... I could've... I've so got this. I accidentally double tapped E. Thank you for the apples. They'll give me the boost of sugar that I need to go just a little bit faster. Oh, thank you for the rotation. That's my secret. I'm always hungry. Okay, but how? I feel like that was a really shoddy, like, opening drive, but I'll see what happens. Really, I could probably make up the last, like, second that I need by just, like, parking a car with slightly better acceleration. Oh my goodness, I double tapped E again. Yeah, suddenly speedruns. What if I... Damn, I wonder if I should put up my WASD input tracker. That could be entertaining. Hold on. Let me just do... We do a little speed running. This thing does not handle the grass well. But it probably makes up for it on the not grassy bit. I'm probably not going to make it. I've made it here with more time before and not succeeded. If I just run for it, I can go straight across the grassy bit if I go for it. Micro-optimizations. Is there no way to use another car to drive the little bit? I was kind of thinking the same thing, like, it's very slow. This car doesn't have, like, a terrible startup, speed. Maybe I use this and it, like, handles better. It's also a bit longer, so I can, like, get into it from farther back. Never mind, that's not a thing. I literally just need like half of a second on a good run. Ow, my bones. I've been taken out by law enforcement using reasonable force. I don't think the green car went in. I also don't think that this car is going to work for me. Is there some way? What if I drive this car into this lake and then just go right here? Like through the wall. Oh, thank you for the head pads and the rotation and the hydration. Oh, it was a push door. Anyway. So, like, what if I just... was the opposite of... in prison for my crimes. Right, I think there's propane in there. Which I can probably use to blow up the wall. So I don't have to get a car through here, I just have to get like a box through here, and boxes are pretty small. All things considered. Yeah, that works. I can make it a little bit bigger, I think. I've only got 0.3 seconds of blowtorch left. But hopefully that's enough to set off some propane. If not, I am not averse to hitting crouch. Set up multiple at once? That makes too much sense. I also forgot that I had the shotgun, which just does that. Anyway. Alright, round, however many rounds this has been. I'm just gonna say 3. Whichever round I succeed on is gonna be round 3. Okay. This is super clean so far. Okay, this is going incredibly well. Oh my goodness, that's like... That went so much better. I mean, it took me a half hour to suss that one out, but I'm proud of it. Just, Breaker. You reached a new rank. New tool has been delivered. Plank tools. Planks can be used to build primitive ramps. You can also attach objects with planks to lift or drag heavy items. Use multiple planks to build complex structures. And pipe bombs. Incredible. I definitely feel like the more planks, the better. Like, it just feels like it's gonna pay off incredibly well. I've been up all night digging through the login devices and managed to find a connection to the West Point Marina. I haven't been able to figure out more on BT, but Lee has a warehouse in West Point. I guess whatever fishy business he's up to, the marina is not the final destination. I was thinking the boat GPS devices could give me an idea on where he's moving the product, especially if I could compare their recent destinations to the shipping log. Can you get them for me? I can certainly try. Steal GPS devices from boats, get log files from office. Breaking an alarm box or a wire triggers the alarm. There are 3 primary targets, 2 secondary targets. Well, let's scope them out. Let's case the joint. I think I actually needed that. Hold on. I just compulsively swing my hammer, but like... Yeah, I think I need that. Okay, so this is on a pole. Pretty sure that if the pole breaks, never mind. Not a factor. I was gonna be like, oh, I'm pretty sure if the pole breaks, then it sets off the alarm, but like... The pole scoffs at, like... my pathetic estimation of its capabilities. It's far more powerful than I gave it credit for. Okay, so this is a thing that I can just grab. Pretty sure this isn't a boat that I can drive. I hit the button to try and get into it. So hypothetically though, I could like grab this and like drag it somewhere in the boat. Especially now that I got planks. I should also probably buy more blowtorch fuel the next time I'm at my PC. This is absolutely an option. A surprisingly easy one at that. I suppose it makes the most sense to me to put this, like... Okay, I think we're having a box moment. This is fine. I was gonna say it makes the most sense for me to put this thing, like, here. Because then I can just, like, grab it and go when I'm leaving. Is it fine? Yeah, this is fine. Immaculate. Textbook. So I can just grab that on my way out. I'll probably do a similar deal if I move that thing. No, I can't because it's wired. So I'm probably going to want, like, to use a speedboat to get over to that thing on my way out. There are files in the office, which are probably wired up to something. I do have planks. I could just make, like, ramps directly to places. I must keep my entire toolkit in mind. Hello. Antique pirate dagger. So I can grab this. I probably want to start on the right side of the map and kind of, like, go around in a C shape rather than starting here. So it actually kind of makes sense to me, actually, to, like, make a plank bridge here. If it works, it works. So I presumably grab something over here. It's on a boat. I could possibly get that boat into the water. That boat over there is in the water, but it's very big. That said, there is room. This is fine. I didn't need my hearing. It was holding me back. Eh. Oh dear. We do a jump. And kind of like the other thing, I can just kind of put this thing right by where I leave. If need be, I can even raise the bridge. So I probably don't need to go that far. I've never been good at parallel parking. Like, I have parallel parked before in real life. I just don't like doing it. Perfect. This is actually fine. Yeah, I can get in, grab that, hop down, grab that. Like that, but with less falling in the water. Back up and... Okay. So the only things left to do are to account for that thing over there. Honestly, I don't even need to get that into the water. I can just drive it on the tow truck. The existence of a tow truck implies the existence of, like, a finger truck. This thing is surprisingly zippy. I guess they didn't leave things unlocked after... Never mind. We're gonna take tonight's second 5-minute break here. Please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom. Anything that would take you about 5 minutes. I will see you shortly. I return. So really, I just have to get this thing, then get over here. So I basically just need a speedboat. Maybe like a little car to get me from like here to here. Luckily, such things are readily available. Actually, that little car is probably going to be faster. Okay, so I get the thing, I drive the car around, get that thing. I need a fast boat to get back over. Is this a fast boat? Yes, it is, actually. Not gonna lie, thought it wasn't going to be a fast boat. Thought it was going to be a cumbersome boat. I like how that one's still broken. Yeah, in hindsight, I probably could have just used the boat that I'm stealing from. Oh well, where's the fun in that? It does kind of mean that ultimately these planks will have been somewhat pointless, but I'll use them anyway. I need a quick route through the building. That's what the boxes that people are lived in, or that's what the boxes that people live in are called, buildings. And... yoink. Not gonna lie, this one was nowhere near as tight as the last one. Heavy lifting. Another thing came to mind. Since the computers didn't include any details on BT, maybe there are documents in his safes that could bring some clarity? You've already done a lot for me, but if you have the time and energy to go get them, I'd appreciate it. the save to your escape vehicle. If possible, also get the other save and pick up all key cabinets. I mean, I was optimizing the path in the last one, it was just a really funky path. Alright. Same deal. Setting off an alarm is done the same way as before. Let me in. Okay, that is a thing. Okay, so I can just grab that. I might be able to use planks to get over here. Titanium screwdriver bits, nice. I kind of question what the utility of titanium is in this context, but I mean, nice. It does kind of amuse me a little bit how this game is called Teardown, but like, I've had a grand total of, I think, 1 demolition mission. And the rest have just been like heists. Here's another one I just gotta have to grab and run. Which is actually, like I say, the reason why I ended up kind of bouncing off this game the first time around. Was I was like, oh, I want to do like a destruction game. And it was just like, you get heists. Live with it. Okay, that is basically not easy to move. And needs to be transported into my car. Or truck or whatever. My vehicle. And same deal. If I could get like 1 vehicle nearby, I could maybe like get them both into the back of it real fast. Maybe. Luckily they are really close to one another. I do see a vehicle with a basket over here. So I probably ought to use that. I wasn't actually trying to make an escape hole, but like that does work. Might need to think about how to actually get these through the walls. That technically works. A rare instance of Fox playing an FPS. I mean, it's not that uncommon, I think. Granted, I don't do it terribly often on stream, and it's been a while since I really got into one, so I guess you're right. Blasting the walls open with pipe bombs seems like the solution here. I do enjoy a good FPS, I really do. I just don't play that many FPSs. Okay, so I think, first things first, I want to... Huh, that went better than expected. Alright. Feels a little bit weird to me thinking of a shotgun as a precision instrument, but like, here we are. Yeah, from there I ought to be able to chuck them both in. This one needs a little bit more clearance. Also, thank you for the hydration. Alright, so I gotta start over there. Go in like a horizontally mirrored L shape. This doesn't feel terribly unreasonable. So I want to grab that. I want to get out quickly. Then I want to get up there quickly, so I can get across quickly. And that sounds like a job for the planks. If it works, it works. That gets me up here, which gets me into here. I can drop down and get that. I have to drop down, I can't get it from there. I come through here, and... this maybe works. Yeah, that totally works. Then I run through, I tip both safes into the thing, and then I drive it out. It's a little janky, but like, if it works, it works. Yeah, alright. Getting a slight headache. I'll do my best. Here we go. So I go like that, I go like this. We try again. Thank you for whatever that was. Thank you for the head pats, I appreciate them. Well, that's one way to overshoot. Jump out of a window, land on a roof. It's like, okay. I guess I'm just awesome. Not gonna lie, didn't think I was gonna get away with that one. Okay. Go fast, go fast. Fast, I say. I am going to be baffled if this actually works first try. That totally would have worked. Okay, this is another one of those scenarios where I just had to go a tiny little bit faster. Just a little bit. Oh, unfortunate. Honestly, I probably don't need to jump there at all. I think that the physics is fairly deterministic, so it kind of is a case of aim the safe better. But it is a slightly janky thing that I'm attempting to do, so... Oh yeah, I don't have to jump at all. Okay, 40 seconds remaining. I definitely feel like it needs a little bit of my help on the flight down. But as long as it gets that, it's good. Not even close. Ugh. Rook. You reached a new rank. We get... just straight up a gun. Alright. Thank you for the headbands. Medium range precision shooting as opposed to short range, presumably somewhat inaccurate shooting. Thank you for the headpads, and also I got away with it. They can't stop me. Ah, thanks. Now I just need to find somebody who can work a save. I'll get back to you in a bit and let you know how it goes. I still don't know how, but Lee found out about the cars and totally overreacted. I just saved the life of those poor cars, and he goes completely mental and vandalizes my property. Can you believe that? Good thing I'm properly insured. I've thought about ways to get back at him, and finally nailed it. The iconic water tower at Lee Chemicals. His grandfather built it with his bare hands, and it has since become a symbol for the entire Lee family. They even use it in their logo type. Making the tower a little less tall would make a more suitable symbol for the small man he is. "10 bombs, nice." Yep, finally, another actual demolition mission. My first thought is, what vehicles do I have? Is that like a raft out in the middle of the lake? What's going on with that? Is that just like a floating diving board? It does entertain me somewhat that there are like these areas kind of outside the mission area. Huh. That is actually just what it is. Nice. Bricklaying Master awarded to L. Lee by the Guild of Brickies. In loving memory of L. Lee Sr., the real legend. Catch you later, Granddad. Aw. It's actually kind of heartwarming. I like how I got pipe bombs and bombs. They're two distinct things. Honestly, this one's probably better for demolition. There are also a bunch of propane tanks on the back of that thing. Not that I'm complaining, but like you really would assume, or at least I would, that at a certain point security is called for. Granted, this is like two dueling rich jerks, so they probably are just like, I don't want to pay salaries. Bob. Oh, these are a lot easier to work with than the pipe bombs, not gonna lie. And then she exploded. I don't believe that I can rocket jump. Yep. I do have pipe bombs. The non-pipe bombs do seem a little bit more optimized for demolition, however. There has to be like one pixel holding this whole thing up. Oh, it's this little bit of glass here. Or was it? Oh, it's gotta be... Okay, it's anchored by this thing. That's what's going on. Alright, now what's keeping you intact? Oh. Okay, now... Oh, it's... Is it this? No, I already destroyed this. I feel like I covered my bases. I see now why what's-his-face was such an esteemed bricklayer. Oh, there we go. It was the northern awning of, like, that thing that was holding it in the air, somehow. That escalated quickly. They turned the gas back on. Coffee never tasted better. I was skeptical about working with Mr. Wu in the first place, but he does pay well, and so does the new client, Lee Chemicals. Did they contact you directly? By the way, I heard on the news that there's some madman on the loose around here. I hope you remember to lock the door at night. Stay safe. Gordon really took this one step too far. You probably heard it on the news, but he hit my tower, the Lee Tower. My poor grandfather's probably turning in his grave right now. It'll cost me a fortune to rebuild that. I need to get back at Gordon, but he's so loaded with money that whatever I do, he can just pay somebody to fix it. The only way to get to him is to strike where his fat wallet can't protect him, his precious art collection. Some of those paintings would also make a nice contribution to the restoration fund for my new tower. Alternately, hey, I've heard about your skills. Could you do a quick job for me? You see, there's construction going on at the marina, some new dock or something, and there are high-end tools spread all over the place. I could really use some of them for an upcoming job. Could you go over there and collect them for me? I do enjoy how these are, like, all interconnected. Presumably this guy's getting hired to, like, build this guy's tower. Steal at least 4 paintings. There are 8 targets. I want to get at least 4 of them. There's a cement truck here. Not sure what he's doing here. Maybe he's building a new pool? Or new walls? Those could be made out of cement. Okay, let's see. Not gonna lie, I kind of hate modern style architecture like this. I can tell that I'm a little bit frazzled because my first thought was like, oh, I wonder if this is like a scannable QR code. Like, I rather doubt it. What a horrible attempt at symbolism. That is protected. I imagine I'll not find one that isn't, but... And there's another one. There's one of the guardhouse here. I just straight up yoinked somebody's wallet. I actually feel a little bit bad about that one. Okay, my escape's off to the right, so... Probably what happens is I start down here, and then kind of like go around in like a Z shape. That's kind of how I'm envisioning it playing out. I feel like this is mostly just going to be like setting up like vehicles to get between things. Second prize, Wu Open, 1994. So I go here. I get into a vehicle, I go over there. I personally never really understood the obsession that some people have with cars. Like, I'm not saying that, like, liking cars is a bad thing, just, it's not for me personally. So I can yoink that. So I yoink that, come over here, yoink that. Drive over here. Got real concerned there for a second, but luckily it didn't go poorly. So then I get into this car. And I actually want to drive it off in this direction. I grab that. Then I want to get up here, which is going to be the biggest obstacle. but I think I've got ideas. Well, I know that I've got ideas, but I think I've got good ideas. So my idea is basically... I'll get a vehicle like this one. Go over to this hole here. Raise the bed. And then that gets me up in here. Get me elevator. Go up. Grab that. And I go... this way towards my escape. It could totally work. I don't know if I can do this all in 60 seconds, but it's worth a shot. Can I make this fall? Yes, I can. I was like, wait, I'm not playing a game where I don't take fall damage. Okay. In my head, this is relatively slick. Hopefully it is also relatively slick in practice. This bit is the sketchiest right here because it's a really long drive, all things considered. Zero shot that this is a route that's gonna work. Like, even if I did it perfectly, I think that wouldn't work. I don't think there's a fast way to, like, consolidate these things. Going all the way from down there to up here feels really slow. This one's the most remote, so I wonder if there's, like... Logically, I should probably start there. You're getting Hitman vibes? I see where you're coming from with that, yeah. One that's over here. Logically, this is the farthest one away, so logically I should start here. Because like going all the way out and then all the way back is really slow. So if I can like cut one of those trips out, or rather make one of those trips while the timer isn't running to be more accurate, that'd be nice. So yeah, severing the thing there doesn't work. Okay, so maybe I start here, I zoop over there, pretend that I got like a really good car for this. I grab that. I zoop over here. I get this. Going through the wall is also very fun. Then hypothetically I could even, like, come out this way. Go up here. Oh! Hold on a second. Hold on a second. So I can get up like that. Bust through here. Get up there, however. Hop down here. I would still need to get this thing though. Like I could put like a car here and then just like zip it around to the side, probably. I definitely think that ramping off that thing is like the way to go. I legitimately hadn't even contemplated that until it happened by accident. Now, all that said, I think we're gonna call it there for the night. It's getting kind of late, my head is kind of starting to hurt. I'm pretty content with the progress that I made. Thank you so much for joining me, I really appreciate it each and every time. Next scheduled stream is going to be tomorrow, the game is going to be Bloodstained. The next time that I'm playing Teardown is going to be on Sunday. I hope you have a wonderful night. I hope to see you again. Good night.